A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court by Mark Twain, Part 2 of Chapter 21, titled The Pilgrims. The first thing we struck that day was a procession of pilgrims. It was not going our way, but we joined it nevertheless, for it was hourly being borne in upon me now that if I would govern this country wisely, I must be posted in the details of its life, and not at second hand, but by personal observation and scrutiny. This company of pilgrims resembled Chaucer's in this, that it had in it a sample of about all the upper occupations and professions the country could show, and a corresponding variety of costume. There were young men and old men, young women and old women, lively folk and grave folk. They rode upon mules and horses, and there was not a side saddle in the party, for this specialty was to remain unknown in England for 900 years yet. It was a pleasant, friendly, sociable herd, pious, happy, merry, and full of unconscious coarsenesses and innocent indecencies. What they regarded as the merry tale went the continual round and caused no more embarrassment than it would have caused in the best English society 12 centuries later. Practical jokes worthy of the English wits of the first quarter of the far-off 19th century were sprung here and there and yonder along the line, and compelled the delightedest applause, and sometimes, when a bright remark was made at one end of the procession and started on its travels towards the other, you could note its progress all the way by the sparkling spray of laughter it threw off from its bows as it ploughed along, and also by the blushes of the mules in its wake. Sandy knew the goal and purpose of this pilgrimage, and she posted me. She said, "The journey to the valley of holiness, for to be blessed of the godly hermits, and drink of the miraculous waters, and be cleansed from sin." Where is this watering place? It lieth a 2-day journey hence by the borders of the land that hight the Cuckoo Kingdom. Tell me about it. Is it a celebrated place? Oh, of a truth, yes, there be none more so. Of old time there lived there an abbot and his monks. Belike were none in the world more holy than these, for they gave themselves to study of pious books, and spoke not the one to the other, or indeed to any, and ate decayed herbs, and gnawed hereto, and slept hard, and prayed much, and washed never. Also they wore the same garment until it fell from their bodies through age and decay. Right so came they to be known of all the world by reason of these holy austerities, and visited by rich and poor, and reverenced. Proceed. But always there was lack of water there. Whereas, upon a time, the holy abbot prayed, and for answer a great stream of clear water burst forth by miracle in a desert place. Now, where the fickle monks tempted of the fiend, and they wrought with their abbot unceasingly by beggings and beseechings that he would construct a bath, and when he was become weary, and might not resist more, he said, "Have ye your will, then?" and granted that they asked. Now, mark thou what 'tis to forsake the ways of purity, the which he loveth, and wanton with such as be worldly and an offence, these monks did enter into the bath, and come thence washed as white as snow, and lo, in that moment his sign appeared in miraculous rebuke, for his insulted waters ceased to flow and utterly vanished away. They fared mildly, Sandy, considering how that kind of crime is regarded in this country. Belike, but it was their first sin, and they had been of perfect life for long, and differing in naught from the angels. Prayers, tears, torturings of the flesh, all was vain to beguile that water to flow again. Even processions, even burnt offerings, even votive candles to the Virgin did fail every each of them, and all in the land did marvel. How odd to find that even this industry has its financial panics, and at times sees its assignats and greenbacks languish to zero, and everything comes to a standstill. Go on, Sandy. And so upon a time, after year and day, the good abbot made humble surrender and destroyed the bath. And behold, his anger was in that moment appeased, and the waters gushed richly forth again, and even unto this day they have not ceased to flow in that generous measure. Then I take it nobody has washed since. He that would essay it could have his halter free, yes, and swiftly would he need it too. The community has prospered since? Even from that very day. The fame of the miracle went abroad into all lands. From every land came monks to join. They came even as the fishes come in shoals, and the monastery added building to building, and yet another to these, and so spread wide its arms and took them in. And nuns came also, and more again, and yet more, and built over against the monastery on the yon side of the whale, and adding building to building, until mighty was that nunnery. And these were friendly unto those, and they joined their loving labours together, and together they built a fair great foundling asylum midway of the valley between. You spoke of some hermits, Sandy. These have gathered there from the ends of the earth. A hermit thriveth best when there be multitudes of pilgrims. Ye shall not find no hermit of no sort wanting. If any shall mention a hermit of a kind, he thinketh new and not to be found, but in some far strange land. Let him but scratch among the holes and caves and swamps that line that valley of holiness, and whatsoever be his breed it skills not, he shall find a sample of it there. I closed up alongside of a burly fellow with a fat, good-humoured face, purposing to make myself agreeable and pick up some further crumbs of fact, but I had hardly more than scraped acquaintance with him when he began eagerly and awkwardly to lead up in the immemorial way to that same old anecdote, the one Sir Dinadan told me, what time I got into trouble with Sir Sagramore and was challenged of him on account of it. I excused myself and dropped to the rear of the procession, sad at heart, willing to go hence from this troubled life, this vale of tears, this brief day of broken rest, of cloud and storm, of weary struggle and monotonous defeat, and yet shrinking from the change as remembering how long eternity is, and how many have wended thither who know that anecdote. Early in the afternoon we overtook another procession of pilgrims, but in this one was no merriment, no jokes, no laughter, no playful ways, nor any happy giddiness, whether of youth or age. Yet both were here, both age and youth, grey old men and women, strong men and women, of middle age, young husbands, young wives, little boys and girls, and 3 babies at the breast. Even the children were smileless. There was not a face among all these 100 people but was cast down and bore that set expression of hopelessness which is bred of long and hard trials and old acquaintance with despair. They were slaves, chains led from their fettered feet and their manacled hands to a sole leather belt about their waists, and all except the children were also linked together in a file 6 feet apart by a single chain which led from collar to collar all down the line. They were on foot and had tramped 300 miles in 18 days upon the cheapest odds and ends of food and stingy rations of that. They had slept in these chains every night, bundled together like swine. They had upon their bodies some poor rags, but they could not be said to be clothed. Their irons had chafed the skin from their ankles and made sores which were ulcerated and wormy. Their naked feet were torn, and none walked without a limp. Originally there had been 100 of these unfortunates, but about half had been sold on the trip. The trader in charge of them rode a horse and carried a whip with a short handle and a long heavy lash divided into several knotted tails at the end. With this whip he cut the shoulders of any that tottered from weariness and pain and straightened them up. He did not speak. The whip conveyed his desire without that. None of these poor creatures looked up as we rode along by. They showed no consciousness of our presence, and they made no sound but one. That was the dull and awful clank of their chains from end to end of the long file, as 43 burdened feet rose and fell in unison. The file moved in a cloud of its own making. All these faces were grey with a coating of dust. One has seen the like of this coating upon furniture in unoccupied houses, and has written his idle thought in it with his finger. I was reminded of this when I noticed the faces of some of those women, young mothers carrying babes that were near to death and freedom, how as something in their hearts was written in the dust upon their faces, plain to see, and Lord, how plain to read, for it was the track of tears. One of these young mothers was but a girl, and it hurt me to the heart to read that writing and reflect that it was come up out of the breast of such a child, a breast that ought not to know trouble yet, but only the gladness of the morning of life. And no doubt. She reeled just then, giddy with fatigue, and down came the lash and flicked a flake of skin from her naked shoulder. It stung me as if I had been hit instead. The master halted the file and jumped from his horse. He stormed and swore at this girl and said she had made annoyance enough with her laziness, and as this was the last chance he should have, he would settle the account now. She dropped on her knees and put up her hands and began to beg and cry and implore in a passion of terror. But the master gave no attention. He snatched the child from her and then made the men slaves who were chained before and behind her throw her on the ground and hold her there and expose her body, and then he laid on with his lash like a madman till her back was flayed, she shrieking and struggling the while piteously. One of the men who was holding her turned away his face, and for this humanity he was reviled and flogged. All our pilgrims looked on and commented on the expert way in which the whip was handled. They were too much hardened by lifelong everyday familiarity with slavery to notice that there was anything else in the exhibition that invited comment. This was what slavery could do, in the way of ossifying what one may call the superior lobe of human feeling, for these pilgrims were kind-hearted people, and they would not have allowed that man to treat a horse like that. I wanted to stop the whole thing and set the slaves free, but that would not do. I must not interfere too much, and get myself a name for riding over the country's laws and the citizens' rights roughshod. If I lived and prospered, I would be the death of slavery that I was resolved upon, but I would try to fix it so that when I became its executioner, it should be by command of the nation. Just here was the wayside shop of a smith, and now arrived a landed proprietor who had bought this girl a few miles back, deliverable here where her irons could be taken off. They were removed. Then there was a squabble between the gentleman and the dealer as to which should pay the blacksmith. The moment the girl was delivered from her irons, she flung herself, all tears and frantic sobbings, into the arms of the slave who had turned away his face when she was whipped. He strained her to his breast and smothered her face and the child's with kisses, and washed them with the rain of his tears. I suspected. I inquired. Yes, I was right. It was husband and wife. They had to be torn apart by force. The girl had to be dragged away, and she struggled and fought and shrieked like one gone mad, till a turn of the road hid her from sight, and even after that we could still make out the fading plaint of those receding shrieks. And the husband and father, with his wife and child gone, never to be seen by him again in life? Well, the look of him one might not bear at all, and so I turned away, but I knew I should never get his picture out of my mind again, and there it is to this day to wring my heartstrings whenever I think of it. We put up at the inn in a village just at nightfall, and when I rose next morning and looked abroad, I was where a knight came riding in a golden glory of the new day, and recognized him for knight of mine. Sir Ozana le Cure Hardy. He was in the gentleman's furnishing line, and his missionarying speciality was plug hats. He was clothed all in steel, in the beautifulest armor of the time, up to where his helmet ought to have been, but he hadn't any helmet. He wore a shiny stovepipe hat, and was ridiculous a spectacle as one might want to see. It was another of my surreptitious schemes for extinguishing knighthood by making it grotesque and absurd. Sir Ozana's saddle was hung about with leather hat boxes, and every time he overcame a wandering knight he swore him into my service and fitted him with a plug and made him wear it. I dressed and ran down to welcome Sir Ozana and get his news. "How's trade?" I asked.
"Ye will note that I have but these 4 left, yet were they 16 whenas I got me from Camelot."
"Why, you have certainly done nobly, Sir Ozana. Where have you been foraging of late?"
"I am but now come from the valley of holiness, please you, sir."
"I am pointed for that place myself. Is there anything stirring in the monkery more than common?"
"By the mass ye may not question it. Give him good feed, boy, and stint it not, and thou valuest thy crown. So get ye lightly to the stable, and do even as I bid. Sir, it is parlous news I bring, and be these pilgrims, then ye may not do better, good folk, than gather and hear the tale I have to tell, sith it concerneth you, forasmuch as ye go to find that ye will not find, and seek that ye will seek in vain my life, being hostage for my word, and my word and message being these, namely, that a hap has happened whereof the like has not been seen no more but once this 200 years, which was the first and last time that sad misfortune struck the holy valley in that form by commandment of the Most High, whereto by reasons just and causes thereunto contributing, wherein the matter. The miraculous fount hath ceased to flow? This shout burst from 20 pilgrims' mouth at once. Ye say well, good people, I was verging to it, even when ye spake. Has somebody been washing again? Nay, it is suspected, but none believe it. It is thought to be some other sin, but none wit what. How are they feeling about the calamity? None may describe it in words. The fount is these 9 days dry, the prayers that did begin then, and the lamentation, and sackcloth, and ashes, and the holy processions, none of these have ceased, nor night nor day, and so the monks, and the nuns, and the foundlings be all exhausted, and do hang up prayers writ upon parchment, sith that no strength is left in man to lift up voice, and at last they sent for thee, Sir Boss, to try magic and enchantment, and if you could not come, then was the messenger to fetch Merlin, and he is there these 3 days now, and saith he will fetch that water through he burst the globe, and wreck its kingdoms to accomplish it, and right bravely doth he work his magic, and call upon his hellions to hie them hither and help, but not a whiff of moisture hath he started yet, even so much as might qualify as mist upon a copper mirror, and ye count not the barrel of sweat he sweateth betwixt sun and sun over the dire labours of his task. And if ye... Breakfast was ready. As soon as it was over, I showed to Sir Ozana these words which I had written on the inside of his hat. Chemical Department, Laboratory Extension, Section GPXXP, sent 2 of first size, 2 of number 3, and 6 of number 4, together with the proper complementary details, and 2 of my trained assistants. And I said, Now get you to Camelot as fast as you can fly, brave knight, and show the writing to Clarence, and tell him to have these required matters in the Valley of Holiness, with all possible dispatch. I will well, Sir Boss. And he was off. So, that was chapter 21. Bye-bye. Till next time with Chapter 22, titled The Holy Fountain.